Hello, everyone. Welcome to Latter-day Struggles. This is your host, Valerie, and I am excited to have a guest on our show today. Hello, Mark Crego. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful today. It's great to be here with you.
It is really exciting to be here with you all. I want to share a little bit with you all about Mark as we sort of set this conversation up. He is someone who is just, I think, I'm going to go ahead and just be very cheesy here to get us going. An answer to a prayer for me. When we started the Latter-day Struggles platform and podcast in 2022, it was really, it was a side project. It wasn't something that I ever intended to so significantly change my life and the life of my family. And just in time, as this unfolded in the years, changed things for us. Mark came onto the scene and has been just very, very instrumental in helping the Latter-day Struggles podcast and platform, and me and Nathan. He's just been such a support because of a passion project that he has. And that's why I have invited him onto the show today, so that you can better understand who he is and what his passion project is. Mark, if you would you go ahead and just introduce yourself a little bit and talk? Well, first introduce yourself, and then help us all understand what the Faith Journey Foundation is. And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, that's a good way to start. I've been on a faith journey for about 35 years. In the mid 80s and in the early 90s, I was struggling with the church. I was a 70, which meant I was doing missionary work all the time, and I hated it. And I realized that it was just a futile exercise. And then when they released the word 70s, I said, Hallelujah, the church is true. I just found it very difficult. And at that time, I struggled with a few different things that sent me into 12-step groups for a while. And when I was in 12-step groups for a while, I had these spiritual experiences that were completely separate from Mormonism. And it made me question, well, who is God if it's not just in Mormonism? And so I started questioning. I got involved in interfaith work. I got involved in several different areas, but most importantly, at the time, I got honest with myself. I got honest with my wife about some of my struggles. She had me talk to the bishop, and then I got under informal probation after having an experience with what I thought was Christ in really changing my life. And so that really put me on a struggling journey for a very long time. And in those days, Val, there weren't people like you helping out people that were in their faith struggles. I mean, I just went through so much time. I met people like Maxine Hanks back in the 90s when she was excommunicated. And I just really, until about 2008, I was a once again award mission leader, oddly enough, and I struggled because my oldest daughter came out as gay, and the church was actively promoting, not being able to allow her to be with a partner that saved her life. And I came to the conclusion I couldn't morally or ethically support the church any longer. So I found a job in India, or an assignment in India, and I went to India for a couple of years and found, there isn't any nirvana anywhere in any religion. And so I came back. The week that I came back, I met John DeLynn, and because I said, I need to figure out how I can stay active in this church because I'm going to lose my family otherwise. And so I met Dan Weatherspoon back in the early 2012 timeframe, and we started working on podcasts and support communities that would help people navigate their faith journey. This is before you got on the scene, Val. And it was kind of complex because then in about 2016, 15, John got excommunicated. And it sort of, he got a target on his back, mainly driven by the apologetic organizations funded by the church. And what I noted at the time is that, the church has this arsenal of resources that can help people stay in the fold. It's a one side of a faith journey. It's a valid faith journey. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying that it's only one aspect of a faith journey is as you navigate doubt, as you navigate family dynamics, as you navigate all the things that are part of a faith journey, you need a more objective focus, and there isn't any available. So Dan and I started the Faith Journey Foundation about 2017 to help people specifically to provide safe, non-prescriptive support for people navigating faith development. And Dan runs his podcast, which is entitled Latter-day Faith, and it's an active community of people working together. At the beginning of our Faith Journey Foundation, we also had Susan Hinckley with us for a bit. And I was the person that, when she was saying that she wanted to start a podcast that was focused exclusively on women, and I supported that, but I really wanted her to be in my fold. So I said things that she used in her first podcast to say why she was driven so heavily to make a woman-owned oriented podcast because some guy told her that she'd never be successful. Now, we dispute that quote a little bit, but we have a good time with it. But that's our History of Faith Journey Foundation, that our purpose exclusively was to serve those who stay, who redefine or move beyond, just to help them. And your mission in Latter-day Struggles and your entire practice is the same focus. And so we found a lot of synergy working together that way.
Wow. Okay. I have to just like say a few things in response to sort of, I don't know, underscore some of the things that I just heard from you. A little bit I already knew, some of it I'm learning for the first time. But what I love about what you're saying is that, well, for one thing, the faith journey experience right now is very, very different than it used to be. And you're not the first person who has talked to me about this. There are many, many people who, obviously, human beings are on an arc of their own growth. And that was still happening back before the internet. It was just that there was no resource, there was nowhere to go. And oftentimes people really did go, they just kind of buried it deep, because if you said something about what you were experiencing in former eras, there really wasn't an alternate community or even places to better make sense of what was going on. And so it's just very interesting that even in the last few decades, there is just so much more out there. I loved also, Mark, I want to heighten what you just said in that when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I mean, they are very explicit that what they offer and what they support is all about strengthening one's faith in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And as you said, and as I agree, that is a noble cause, and it is necessary and appropriate, and it is the right path for a lot, excuse me, for a lot of people based on where they are in their own development. And yet also, what is very misunderstood that I frequently talk about on Latter-day Struggles is that human beings grow and develop, and their needs change when it comes to spirituality. And there is not built in to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints an acknowledgement of that arc of growth. And oftentimes what happens is that human beings, as they grow beyond what the church offers, is they are kind of turned into villains, or at very least unfaithful, or that as if there's something either pathologized, that they're sick, or that they are falling off the deep end, or that there's something wrong with them. And so what mental health workers are trying to do in this era is we are trying to normalize the journey itself, and that the journey of faith expansion is actually growth oriented. The problem that we run into, as you said, last thing I'll say as we sort of deepen into this, is I really want to appreciate that when we don't understand what this is, and we also have this massive, very wealthy force pushing one agenda, it really becomes a struggle to know how, or even it becomes a struggle for a lot of reasons, to have any counterforce helping and supporting those on the faith journey. And a couple of things I can speak firsthand to is there's so much taboo associated with speaking about these things that I dare say there are probably many more mental health workers that know very well what's going on, but start a podcast and, we all know exactly what will happen eventually, right? And so it requires a great deal of courage and differentiation, and probably a deeper call from something deep within, but also it requires support. And that's tricky, because oftentimes we don't have a lot of support in terms of even like pursuing this on a long term, because what we're doing, what I'm doing, it's my profession. And so this is where I think you have been so instrumental in my life in introducing me to a way to connect people that want to support people like us, who otherwise probably wouldn't be able to sort of pursue this on a long-term basis. So I just threw a lot out there. What are your thoughts on any one of those many things, Mark?
There's a lot there, and I think that those are some very, very important insights. I look at the idea that when I came back from India and I wanted to reconcile my faith and my faith journey with my family because I was about to lose my family because of the conflict and being away so long. That didn't help either. But where did I turn? Where could I turn? There was just nothing really available. And one of the things that is concerning about church, therapy services, in other words, when you have a member of the church who is sort of sanctioned or approved by the church, they will take the position that, you know, as much as are professionally possible that they can, they still will have to anchor you back into the church. It's the same with, so I was in 12-step programs, and the church has adopted the 12-step programs, but they're managed by the priesthood. They're managed by ecclesial authority. They're good programs, but there's something that's lost when the therapy program or the 12-step program is affiliated with the hierarchy. And every professional therapist that I know, and I know several, struggles with this boundary. And it's almost like if you're not with us, you're against us in the therapy world, and that's not true at all. Professional therapists take a very neutral view of your faith journey and want you to find health wherever that may be. And if that's too radical for the church, so be it. But at the same time, it's ethically, morally, and professionally correct to do so. And what my concern is about a lot of people in their faith struggles is they don't have that place to turn because you are told over and over and over again that you can only get help spiritually from the church and from your bishop and from the ecclesiastical authorities and those that are sanctioned and approved by them. Anything else, you are on dangerous territory. And so people are really, really struggling to find help. And the answer that they often find is leaving.
Right.
And the irony of that is the church would like people to be meaningfully engaged in church. I get that. But you can't get people meaningfully engaged in a church if you're forcing them to stay against their will.
Right. Yeah. Amen to that. I really appreciate what you're sharing. And one thing that I think really aligns the purpose and mission of the Faith Journey Foundation and what I do here on Latter Day Struggles is that we both, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but I think you and I both really care about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints. It matters to us. It's part of our identity. It's deeply interwoven in our family relationships, and it is part of our own development. We have become who we are because of our lives very much connected to our Latter Day Saint heritage, and so we care about its well-being, and also we care about the well-being of human beings in the church that are also growing and evolving. And so to that end, what your excuse me, what your organization does, what I try to do is help people make the healthiest choices for them as they are growing and progressing. And we try to do so in a way that helps people become sort of masters of their own ship, shall we say, right? That they get to discern for themselves how they want to be in relationship with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I think that's a big deal. And I know that when you and I were kind of vetting each other, right? Like when we were trying to decide if this was a good fit, I could tell very quickly that you supported the same thing I did, which is I don't want anyone to meet with me ever and say she has an agenda that people stay, or she has an agenda that people leave. If I have an agenda, it is that I want to empower people to trust themselves and their own internal divine. And with
Yes.
that's what then people can move forward in a way that will help them thrive not only psychologically, but also spiritually, because spirituality and psychologically are so very deeply interwoven into our beings. And that's, I think, why your own passion, I think, comes because of the deprivation of your early years, not having a support system, not having anywhere to go. And so that's kind of what I've noticed as I've kind of gotten to know you in the last few months since we've worked together, is that this gentleman cares about this because he's giving someone else what he wishes he had when he was a young man. Is that fair?
Well, maybe not somewhat young anymore, but yes, it's still very relevant. And for me, faith crisis is not a failure of faith. It's often a moment of profound identity formation and spiritual honesty. Uh, One of the things I learned on my mission when I was mm, fired from being a zone leader because I rebelled against the mission president a little bit. That's a long story, not relevant now. But I had a faith crisis then. And then I decided to look into scripture and I found out that faith crisis is an inherent part of a spiritual journey. That you cannot abide in a faith community with full engagement of your soul if you haven't had the trial of your faith, if you haven't been refined, if the things that are difficult for you aren't addressed, that the shadow side of your soul isn't managed or isn't, that's not the right word. It's a matter of having a spiritual path and knowing where you are on it. And so it's about identity formation, and that identity is unique to you. Yes, I can say I'm a Mormon, or I used to be. I'm a former Mormon, I guess, because I can't use the term anymore. But anyway, I am an active Latter-day Saint. I do that because I love the community deeply. I find ways to navigate it in meaningful ways, and I find joy in being with my friends that I've had in the same ward for 41 years. So for me, it anchors that. That's an area of privilege. Not everybody has that opportunity, and I understand that. But more particularly, I was concerned when two of my daughters had problems with their journeys, and we got them because we were in the church, LDS Social Services, whatever it was called at the time. We had therapists coming in for that, and I would say it bordered on malpractice. I mean, none of them were assisted in their suicide ideation. None of them were able to navigate the challenges that they were having with life. It just simply did not work for us. And I think even my wife and me, going to an LDS therapist is not our priority any longer. We need to have somebody who is a neutral ground. And and for a lot of people, um, just the very act of paying for a therapist is visible to your whole family in times. It's not something you can hide. Like, for example, if I were to go out and get a therapist, my wife would know about it because we share an account, right? And that in and of itself can cause conflict. And so when you and I started working together, we said, there's a whole raft of people that need this help that either can't afford it or can't pay for it visibly, and we need to help them. And what's really wonderful, Val, is that how many we've issued like 50 so scholarships so far. And that means 50 people that are getting the help that they need that they weren't getting before. And I think
Yes.
that's a miracle. And I
It
think that's a miracle.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Let me, if I may, I feel like there may be a need to sort of back up a little bit and orient
Sure.
our audience a little bit more about I think we should talk about how we met. I'm gonna offer to you all a little bit of a story to sort of catch us up to the moment that Mark just talked about regarding the miracle of the help and the work that we're doing together. So ever since I began the Latter Day Struggles podcast, almost from the very first week, uh, I started getting letters from people all over the world, and I had a different podcast, a different I mean, I was a therapist, but I was running a private practice, actually doing something sort of similar, but different, and certainly not LDS niched, right? And so when I sort of picked this up as sort of a side thing, it was almost immediate that I could tell that this thing had legs. It was almost like that Book of Mormon story where I can't remember the prophet is preaching to one group of people on the hill, and they're kind of like so interested, and then there's a whole group of people that, do you remember I'm talking about that story? Like that somebody comes up, like a bunch of people have a different need coming up, and he turns his attention to the others and is like, oh, these are the people that need me. That was my experience. And I apologize that I can't remember where that is in the Book of Mormon at the moment. But anyways, that happened, and almost immediately I was torn about, how do I handle this? What do I do? I wanted to meet this need. I was very well aware that if anybody actually listened to this podcast, it would become problematic potentially with my, with my church membership. And I had to go through my own little valley of the shadow and decide if I cared enough about this to put that on the line. And I always get so emotional when I talk about this because that was so scary. Because at the time, I was actually quite early in my own faith journey, but
Right.
I could feel that some things needed to be discussed, and that I had the skill set to speak about challenging topics from a place of courage and respect. And I could do so in a way that was professional and loving, but also, asking for accountability and all these things. I felt like there was a core feeling that I had the skill set to do something unique and different, but that there would potentially be a cost involved. And I moved forward, and of course I did it. And almost immediately I had people not only thanking me for my work, but asking how could they support me financially for this? And of course I had nowhere to send them. I could sort of unofficially say, well, you can send me something over Venmo or whatever, but that was not obviously ideal. And people that are wanting to be generous and wanting to channel their generosity in the direction of uh, of people like myself, they want to do so through a formal channel like a charitable organization or something like that. That was 5 million miles away from anything I had the capability or competency or knowledge of understanding how to even do. And so as the year or two unfolded, I kept sort of just recognizing that I appreciated them, but I didn't really know what to do about that, which is very unfortunate, but that's my skill set deficit. So as a couple of years passed by, it occurred to me that I really needed to figure this out. I was very overwhelmed, as per usual, with all of my projects. And one thing led to another. And this is where I do think I just see, God working in the details, manifesting. And I was introduced to Mark. And the reason why this was such a miracle is Nathan and I actually thought that we were going to have to somehow or other figure out a time and a skill set to open up some sort of a nonprofit. And we just looked at each other and we were like, we just can't. Like, this is so overwhelming to us. We don't have the skill set. We don't have the background. We don't have the time. We were at the time going through all of the challenges that y'all are familiar with the church. And Mark appeared and he says, I already have
Well, I think
this.
you came to me and asked for some advice as to how to set up the nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I consulted some of my very professional friends about how to do that for you. And it turns out that if you were to try to do it on your own, it wouldn't have been in the donor's interest because it may not have been valid. You have to have a nonprofit has to be independent of the people providing the services, and they have to and the nonprofit has to be sort of neutral as to where it provides services. So the whole purpose of Faith Journey Foundation from its very inception was to fund projects that are helping people. So Faith Journey Foundation is a funding organization. Although it holds various projects, but it's a funding organization. And you know, part of that was in my own life. I've contributed significantly through tithing to support the church. I mean, and am grateful for the structure that it has provided in my life. More so now than I think in the last 10 years. It's improved again. But at the same time, I have to recognize there is no funding source for people to get help that is not directly tied to the church. And that's a problem in my mind. And I think as I've talked to the Mormon Mental Health Association, as I talk to other therapists, the idea of being able to provide scholarships for people who need help is very compelling to them. because they see it all the time. They see people that they could help. And, talk to me a little bit about why, or you asked the question, I think, in the prep materials as to why professional help is important, and it can't be that free model any longer because you're devoting your professional education, your time, your talents, everything that you have developed in your life to being able to support people. But outside of the church, you get paid for that because that's time spent doing things that's in a professional nature. When I go to my therapist, I pay money for that. And so now, fortunately, in my family situation, we're both on a journey and we're both very aware of our each other's journey and we're supportive of it. That isn't always the case. And so to be able to provide that funding and to look at it from the perspective of here's all this resources in the church, here's nothing for this other, for the people that are really suffering. And I would venture to say that the people that are really needing that help outnumber the people that are driving themselves back into the church if they're in doubt, because I don't think the church has a good answer for faith crisis. They don't see faith crisis as an opportunity.
Right.
They see it as being a problem, and it isn't.
Right.
Well, it
Yeah.
is and it isn't.
Well, it's only a problem because it's not understood. In other words, faith crisis is only a crisis because it turns one's world upside down because they don't understand, and we have not been educated well on the trajectory of the journey of the human soul. And so, what you and I are doing, and what other therapists are doing in this space, is we're trying to actually offer. We're not only in education, but we're reframing the entire situation itself and offering resources. One thing I want to really highlight that you just said, Mark, that is a big deal, especially from the context of our sort of Western Christian Mormon patriarchal background, is that two things concurrently are happening right now. Number one is as humans evolve and we are awakening to some of the issues that were formerly sort of always issues, but a little bit more invisible. We're recognizing all of the various groups that we have put, on the margins, right? And one of the groups that is awakening to their always and already goodness and equality is women. Okay, these are some of the same human beings that earnestly chose against higher education, chose against any kind of a professional life. And they are the very same women that are having awakening journeys, but are very dependent on a male partner and are in a lot of pain because their struggles with the church are so destabilizing that not only are they worried about something being wrong with them, but approaching a male partner who is the only provider causes a great deal of distress and also kind of a power differential where a male partner who has, who is well-intended, but also potentially and often very devout, at least at the beginning of this whole process, doesn't really want to support a female or, their wife getting help that isn't sort of church correlated. And
It's very scary.
it
It's
is.
scary.
And I see this all of the time. And I think that's one of the things that I care a lot about in talking about what this exactly is, because we've only been doing this for a few months, and I'm aware of the reality that sometimes, as listening, those of you listening today, you're not exactly like, maybe you're getting more like, okay, this is what this is. But what we do is we offer two, like, how do I say this? There's two things going on. We are saying, first and foremost, of course, to just for this even to happen, if you want to channel your charitable donations somewhere that is actively helping people in the Mormon faith crisis, send it to the Faith Journey Foundation, and we will give this money that you are donating to people who desperately need this and don't have means to pay for it. And it also supports providers like myself and others. It's win, 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 win. Like, everybody wins on this. And what we do specifically is we offer scholarships to people who would otherwise not have the means to participate in the various offerings here at the Latter-day Struggles platform. And there are other offerings too that the Faith Journey Foundation has through different providers and things like that. And the whole point then is that if you care about this and you want to send your charitable donations somewhere that feels like a worthy cause to you, you can, but also, and maybe even more importantly, I don't know which is more important, it's all important. But if you're somebody who really wants the support, and if you're somebody who maybe doesn't have access to the funds because of the big picture being that you don't have the resources because you have been a devout, perhaps stay-at-home mom for 15, 20 years, you're our people. We want you to come forward and please ask for a scholarship. We're not going to even, I mean, it's quite liberal, quite frankly. We're not asking for you to even prove anything. We just want you to have what you need. I don't want to turn anyone away from the content that I offer. And that's what I care deeply about. And that's what Mark cares deeply about. Anything you want to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's a great plug. Thank you. It's important. I mean, I think of how much I have funded church educational system, pathways, and everything else like that with my tithing money, and we're almost, I don't want to say that we're in a battle with them because we're not, but it's the one-sided story that doesn't really help people if they aren't buying into that story. And a lot of times they may come back, and I'm happy for them if they do. A lot of times they need to find a richer spiritual life, perhaps in, out, or around the church. Many, many people in what we call the liminal space, the borderlands, what Chris Kimball calls inside the edge of outside. Anyway, I'm not sure I got the title right. And what Susan Hinckley and Cynthia Winward do with their At Last She Said It, these are all very worthy projects, and they're all extremely important to helping develop faith. And so the Faith Journey Foundation funds people authoring books. We fund people doing retreats in communities. We fund podcasts. And what we try to do is get that engagement out to people on a donor model rather than a pay for services model. But at the same time, we recognize that there are people that do need that offer professional services that can't work on a donor model alone, and therefore we become the means whereby the people who are willing to donate are helping the people that need the help. And that to me is just right in the mission of Faith Journey Foundation, and I think it supports you and a lot of others as well.
And I want to put a plug in for what Mark just said. Of course, I'm happy when anybody will, shamelessly, send funds my way, but I don't really want this to be about Latter-day Struggles, y'all. Like, I want this to be about anyone who is offering services and their expertise and their time to help people on a faith journey. And so what Mark is saying, I am absolutely in favor of, meaning that if you specifically want to send it so that someone can get support from what I do, that's great. But if you send it to any of the programs that Mark offers, I couldn't love that more. Equal opportunity, because each and every one of us offers something slightly different, and everyone has very, very different needs. And I see this in some ways as exactly what we need in this, not only in this space of faith experience, right, where we are, but I see this as an important piece of what we need right now in this era. Like, we need community. We need to be there for one another, lifting one another up when it seems like everywhere around us, there's just so much polarization and so much, such a sense of, I guess, like derision and anger and things like that. I want to be a part of something that is lifting people up and helping them see themselves as good and as capable of kind of knowing how they can grow in their own lives. And just knowing that we have people like cheering us on, I think is a big deal, especially because on the Latter-day Saint and surrounding faith journey, we don't have a lot of loved ones oftentimes endorsing what we're doing and telling us, good job, I'm so proud of you, you're doing brave, courageous things to sort of determine who you are and what resonates with you spiritually. We don't get that very often. And so this is a resource for those of you out there who feel a little bit alone, not just unresourced financially, but alone, like you don't know, who to talk to, where to go. Um, I want to help you feel like you're on solid ground and doing something incredibly good and sacred for yourself and for our community. The more of us that are on a faith journey, the more, the aggregate is becoming more spiritually mature. And I kind of love that.
I want to give you a plug a little bit for this idea that, professional therapy, or let's say specifically, compassion doesn't mean professionals should work for free. Sustainable care requires sustainable caregivers because, particularly, LDS faith transitions are uniquely complex. And specialized therapists prevent relational collapse and emotional suffering. And they're trained to do so. And in many cases, there's the the stakes are very high. Suicide ideation, at least on the part of my daughter, as she was struggling with her homosexuality. Um, Faith crisis can mean I'm no longer worthy, and that's a very condemning thing to have happen inside of you. I mean, I fight enough with my own self-worth, but when you lay that guilt on you, then you say, well, screw it, I'm just going to go out and get drunk. I mean, there are so many unhealthy ways to do faith journeys. And we need professionals in the field that are supporting people as their job with the professional resources, with retreats, with books and materials, all of which cost money to produce, and all of which cost money to be able to provide those services. And the church is investing in their side, and I
Right.
appreciate that. But we need the same kind of investment into this community that is, I mean, the fact that we've helped over 50 people so far just warms my heart. And it says that we're doing something really valuable. Likewise, Dan Weatherspoon with his Latter-day Faith, and I participate pretty actively with that, that's doing some really valuable things. What Susan, although Susan I support, but she's not part of our Faith Journey Foundation, but Susan Hinckley and Cynthia Winward, what they're doing is vital. And what we want to do is keep funding and helping these communities. And where people, for example, want to be a paid subscriber to something like that and they can't afford it, we'll help. You see, that's the vision is Faith Journey Foundation is there to help people get the help that they need. And it's to help people who want to donate to people that help be able to apply their donations to people that really need help. We don't take a fee ourselves, a little bit of the credit card stuff and
Yeah.
administrative fees. But 95% of the money donated to Faith Journey Foundation goes to the people that are giving the support. And that's a very different model than is in industry otherwise. So we're really committed to making this work and help people turn their lives around. Find their truth, find their faith, find their love.
This means so much to me, Mark. What you just said is deeply meaningful to me, and I think it's in some ways kind of healing, mostly because when Nathan and I went through the resignation experience, we were actually profoundly touched by the vast majority of people on the entire spectrum of Mormonism, and this was very fascinating. Were really loving and supportive, and I thought that was really quite touching. And yet, at the same time, if there was one single critique that we got, it was how dare these people ask to be financially supported for the work that they do. And I
Yeah.
find that, and again, I kind of, take it in and take a deep breath and be okay with it as best as I can. And also I find it so interesting that never has anyone ever been critical of somebody who becomes, who professionally runs a video game industry sort of thing, or an entertainer, or somebody that's in any other sort of endeavor. But it is interesting that we live in a world that experiences some degree of angst associated with the healing that transcends interests of just this life. In other words, it is so valuable that it sometimes feels like it ought not to be, sort of mixed with the the means of showing or manifesting value in this life. Am I making any sense here? I feel like I'm kind of stumbling around in my words, but it's just sort of an interesting phenomenon that I'm appreciating that we're talking about out loud instead of just keeping it in the shadows. It's important.
Yes, and I think that the whole notion that compassion really means unpaid professional labor is a real problem.
Yeah.
I mean, sustainable services require sustainable caregivers. And I know that in the church, we don't pay anybody that's doing the work of the church at the local level. We do pay the people at the top. We have an entire employment organization of people providing support. I mean, I work with the facilities management people. They're paid employees by the church. I work with people at the temple. They're paid employees by the church. They provide the support and infrastructure out of our tithing money to provide the means whereby we can have community. Well, that's really what we're talking about, is we're talking about, I mean, I know for a fact, Val, you're not getting rich on this.
No,
I
not
know
even
for
close.
an absolute fact that Dan Weatherspoon is not getting rich on this thing. There's a small stipend that comes in to, to what we do. I don't get paid anything on this thing. It goes the other direction. But the point being, it helps to have this available and have this means there. And we would love to have more people engaged in it, because the more that we can help people, the more powerful the support they get for their faith journey.
Yes. And so a little by a lot of people goes a very, very long way. And we've only been doing this for a few months, y'all. And I am so grateful that you came on, Mark, because I just thought it would be so nice for people to sort of get a better understanding, not only of what this is, but of who you are and of your beautiful, good, generous heart to offer support that sort of is the reason why this even is able to happen. And in just a couple, a handful of months since we've started at the end of last year, we've already, we've done a lot of good. And so I see this only becoming more and more powerful in its expression of goodness and in as a means by which many, many people can be served on the faith journey. And for those of you, as you become more acquainted with this, if you happen to be someone in a space where you want to help the healing journey of your fellow Latter-day Saints, so that we can preserve families, we can preserve relationships, we can preserve lives, we can preserve the mental health of people that otherwise would not know or have the resources to understand what's happening. The good that you could do and can do, and many of you are already doing, is inquantifiable. And I personally thank you so much for having the heart to see that what we're doing here is a service that is unique. It's kind of new. It's special. There is not a lot of us out here willing to give up what we've given up to be here. And so we're just so grateful for you all, because you're partners in helping people that enter into the faith journey. And there are more and more and more. It's exponentially growing in the LDS Church every year. There are more people that, and this is, that may sound like a bad news thing, like, oh no, more and more faith crisis. Actually, keep in mind, that's not bad news. This is more and more people growing. They are
Amen.
awakening, and this is good. And so we want to offer to them resources that help them better understand the beautiful thing that is unfolding in their life. And if they don't have the resources, that's when mental health fails, because they don't understand what's actually happening. And we're here to help them. And you're here to help us help them. So this is a beautiful partnership. Anything you want to say as we close today, Mark?
Sure. First of all, I think that the courage it takes for somebody to admit that they need help is a big deal. And sometimes one of the obstacles to being able to effectuate the help that you need is being able to engage in intentional communities like yours, Val, which has, you can listen to the podcast and you get a part of it. But to really engage, you've got these support groups that are actively helping people with their faith journey. And the courage to take and get into that is really twofold. The decision to join, but also the willingness to put up a very modest payment to join. And what we're doing is we're trying to make that easier here. At the end of the day, this work is about making sure people don't have to suffer alone when they are becoming who they truly want to be.
Beautifully said. Wow. That's it right there. Yes. And so please, please, please just give this some thought. And we hope that you will continue to utilize these resources that we are here to provide, because we care about you. We care about our community, and we care about the well-being of those of us here who have some connection to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, wanting community and wanting to become the healthiest and most whole version of yourself. That's what we're here for. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Mark, so much.
Thank you, Val.
Yeah. All right. We will see you all another time, and take care, and bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Latter-day Struggles. If this podcast has supported your faith journey, we invite you to explore the many ways you can continue your healing and growth with us. On our website, you'll find support and processing groups, marriage and parenting courses, and free resources to support where you are in your faith journey. You can also join Valerie in the live fellowship gatherings throughout the year, where we connect, process the podcast, and build meaningful friendships with others on similar paths. If cost has ever been a barrier, we offer podcast scholarships funded by listener donations. To explore all of these offerings, visit the link in today's show notes or go to latterdaystruggles.com. And if this podcast has been meaningful to you, leaving a 5-star review is one of the most powerful ways to help others find this work. Latter-day Struggles is proud to be part of the Dialogue Podcast Network.
Dialogue Podcast Network.